This is the Soft Power Podcast, episode 24. Hi, I'm Susan Callender, and I'm so glad you're here today. The Soft Power Podcast is all about how we show up and communicate in competitive situations. And by competitive, I'm referring to everyday business life. And today, we're going to look at that through the lens of assertiveness. So if you've been working or running a company for any length of time, you know that we buy people or personalities more so than their degrees and their skills and their credentials. Wherever we go and whatever we do, we're generally not the only person who can do a particular job or perform a specific task. We have to face it that business is competitive, and it's absolutely in our best interest to show up like the most sharp, polished candidate for any job. My role in this world is as a trainer and speaker in the corporate world, and I'm also a social skills coach to business owners, professionals, entrepreneurs, and I'm also known as the quiet coach to introverted, shy, reserved, and sometimes self-conscious professionals who are just tired of holding back and not speaking up, and they realize that it's about time that they got off the sidelines and stepped towards the spotlight. Now, how did I go from the big world of corporate training to helping introverts find their mojo? Well, for many, many years, I was frequently the most quiet person in any room. And when you don't speak up, people make assumptions about you. My first job out of college was as a manager in a 5-star boutique hotel. And I can tell you now, though I didn't see it while I was in it, but isn't that how it always works, right? The high-end hospitality business, or in other words, that industry where the customer is always right, may not be the best place for a person who's not assertive. In my management training program and for years to come, I was a total yes person. The drill was a cycle of some unreasonable request and my saying yes, followed by my inwardly cringing, and then just rinse and repeat that a few times, and you get an idea of what my days were like. Soft Power Society, you can relate to a situation similar to mine where you knew you were being taken advantage of and you felt powerless to do anything about it at that moment, or you thought always acquiescing would be the thing that made you a star in your business. It never happens. That never happened for me anyway. To make matters worse, I carried my lack of assertiveness from my high-end hospitality job to the company I started. And because I didn't know better, or perhaps I still thought kowtowing to client request would somehow serve me or the business well, I continued to not speak up, even when it affected my bottom line. Looking back on those years, I was miserable and stressed. I mean, if I told you some of the requests that were made of me and my staff and how I always gave in to clearly unreasonable requests, you would say, you allowed that to happen for what reason? Still today I'm speechless over it. Now, did you happen to note that I just used the word request? We all know there's a huge difference between, and not a lot of subtlety between, requests and demands. But I chose to hear requests as demands, meaning that perhaps they were just asking, but I took it as a, you must do this. I think that's an important distinction to note because as adults and professionals, no one can make us do anything. My ability to either flat out decline requests, which would not have been keeping with a hospitality professional persona, that inability was on me. It was for me to either serve the person or not. It was who I had become, just saying yes all the time, always making things work, even when they were not compensated properly, even when the timing was not right. Maybe it came out of my being teased relentlessly as a kid and just wanting to keep things smooth and flowing. Well, that didn't work because once you give someone the upper hand, they generally don't relinquish power. It's like it's theirs. They know it's theirs. Maybe it was because I just wanted to be liked. Well, that flopped too, because acquiescing promotes a lack of respect, particularly if a person chooses to see your people pleasing as you're being weak or subservient. What it was a horrible habit. Lacking assertiveness is wholly disempowering. I think so much so that you can easily create a feeling of lacking self esteem. But when you make the decision to reclaim your power, you start standing up for yourself, you'll be able to express your thoughts and your feelings and your opinions respectfully and firmly and feel good. And that is an amazing feeling. That's what I want to express to you today. The way to be is assertive, to not allow people to walk all over you. And that good feeling will come from your changing your behavior. It's definitely not going to come from changing someone else's behavior, because that's not the point. But they will see you differently. And when you do it well, you'll notice an immediate change. Often people will ask me to describe the difference between assertiveness and confidence, or being assertive versus being pushy or aggressive. I like to think of assertiveness as holding firm to your desires and or your values while respectfully acknowledging the other party and working toward an outcome that's for the highest good of all involved. How's that? There are no hard feelings and fast rules. What this really comes down to is how you're perceived at the start and the close of an interaction. And we're naturally attracted to confident, strong personalities. We talk about that a lot here on the Soft Power podcast. Therefore, asserting or holding firm to your position, not wavering, and still allowing the other person to feel grateful to know you are a bonus. I mean, that's a big win. Exercising assertiveness can be difficult for adults who are generally introverted or quiet, because the interaction itself can be more conversation than you want to have in the first place. Then you add that to your lack of desire to engage in conversation, then have to make some sort of negotiation or an ask. It can just be too much. That's why I've compiled some tips for you. And later in this episode, I'm going to share with you how you can get the free Assertiveness Accelerator. Regardless of where you are in the social scale and your desire to advocate for yourself, the most important thing to know at the outset is that assertiveness can easily be learned. You start it with your very next interaction. It's really as simple as that. And like anything, it'll take time and patience and practice, and you can start today to work towards those micro wins, because it's those small wins that quickly add up to your shedding that pushover persona. Let's start with body language, because people will read your nonverbal cues before you speak a word. Therefore, they should be as firm as your spoken words. And the very first thing is just having excellent posture, standing tall with your head directly above your shoulders directly above your waist, with that string that you hear about stretching from the top of your head to the ceiling or the sky. And if you are on a virtual call on video, making sure that your eyes are directly affixed to the lens and your posture is just as straight as it would be if you were in person. Your shoulders, both shoulders, should be directly facing the person that you're speaking to. There is something in the world of body language that's referred to as giving someone the cold shoulder. The cold shoulder is when you have one shoulder turned towards a person. You will be more likely to get what you want when you face a person square on versus speaking to them over one shoulder. The next thing that you always want to make sure that you do is, if you are sitting, you want both feet planted firmly flat on the floor. You do not want knee over knee, legs crossed, or in the alpha position with the ankle over a knee. And if you're standing, you don't want one foot crossed over the other. Both are signs of instability and nervousness, and that is not what you want to convey when you're being assertive. Your toes should also point towards the person. Your feet point in the direction where you're going. the direction that has your attention. So to have your feet pointed in one direction and the rest of your body pointed in another is actually telegraphing to the person that you're speaking with that you really don't want to be there. You have 3 points on your body that I'll refer to as your presence power points: your eyes, your neck dimple, and your belly button. The bottom line is to make sure that all 3 of those areas are facing the person that you want to have this negotiation, this dialogue with. Now, in all the points I just mentioned, think about those occasions when you've either been an observer or maybe even been involved in a conversation. You can see what the other person is thinking just based on their body language. The next thing is you'll likely not be completely blindsided by a request, by something that shocks you or you find a bit outlandish, something that you have to negotiate and assert yourself. You've either been in an awkward position before with this very same person, or you immediately recognize when you've been summoned that that may be a sign that you may have to fend for yourself. And this is the time to start thinking about what you're going to say. If you're not used to being assertive, it can be helpful to really think about what you want to say to the other person and get that key message across when you have that conversation. I can recall situations where my first boss would call me into work on my day off. The first time I was shocked because I had just worked 6 days straight. This is when I was in the hotel business. But being a dutiful employee, I said yes. I'm embarrassed to say that the next time the very same thing occurred, I said yes again. I was young. I was just out of college. I had no experience with this type of thing. The difference after the second time I said yes was that the situation started gnawing at me. It started affecting my relationship with this manager. It was on my mind all the time. How did I allow someone to get away with that? It was my feeling that he called me to work on my day off the second time because I had said yes the first time. I had made myself an easy target. That was my doing. My assertiveness kicked in the third time, though, because I readied and primed my brain and my reaction for the likelihood of this occurring again. So I was ready to respectfully decline the request when it came again. And most importantly, it felt like my blood pressure immediately went down and I was able to stop being stressed about how to respond. Therefore, I was better in my job again because I was not burdened by these thoughts of how am I going to handle a situation. When you practice pausing, that's another big thing when you want to appear more assertive. It gives you time to fully hear a person, and I'm just talking about taking 2 beats, perhaps 3, not pausing for 10 or 15 seconds and just having dead air, but just allowing the ask or the request to sink in. We like thoughtful listeners and we see them as being understanding and we feel that we've been heard. Now, let me clarify that to avoid any misunderstanding. When you need to be assertive, pause and take a moment to think before you say anything at all. It's so typical today that people want to accomplish as much as possible, and oftentimes we can get a quick yes or a quick no, and that was not even the best response to give, but it was just that person saying what was on the tip of their tongue. Or so often people anticipate what you're about to say, and they're not even sure because they're thinking about how they're going to respond rather than listening to you. That is why we appreciate those beats, those thoughtful responses. There is something in the world of assertiveness training that's referred to as the broken record technique. And this is really important for you to know about. Sometimes it's difficult to do, but when you use it properly, when you practice it, you'll see the effectiveness right away. What you do is you state clearly what you want or what you don't want, and when that person meets you with resistance, you just say it again. And when they resist again, you say it again. A good time to use the broken record technique would be, let's say somebody's asking you for a favor. Let's say a coworker is asking you to cover for them, and you've done it several times, and there's no benefit to it, and they're taking advantage of you. And you state to them why you cannot do it. And they ask you again, and you state to them why you cannot do it. And they push you a little bit more, and you state to them why you cannot do it and hold firm in your position. It keeps you from being unfairly hounded, and it wears that person down rather than you. Now, keep in mind that although we're focusing on assertiveness, this is still under the umbrella of social communication. So it's important that we and the other party maintain personal boundaries. You know when your space is being invaded just because you'll feel uncomfortable. It's important to set boundaries and then either verbally or non-verbally stepping back to give yourself more space. No one likes someone who's invading their space. So it's important not to let someone you don't know very well, or a person who's being aggressive, or a person who's being aggressive step closer to you than need be. Now, in a verbal communication, this could be just the tone or the tenor of their voice or raising of a voice. It's the same as impeding on a person's physical distance. So often on the Soft Power podcast, we talk about maintaining eye contact. But that's important again today also, because can you imagine not doing that when you're asserting yourself and doing your best to hold firm in your position? Being firm in your expression and eye contact go together like peanut butter and jelly. You just can't have one without the other. Good eye contact does two things. It makes the listener feel that you respect them, and it makes you look more confident to the other person. Too much looking down or away makes you look nervous. And why would you be nervous? There's no need to be nervous, because it's your right to assert your position and stand up for yourself. This is about you and your power and how you're perceived and what you get based on how you show up. If you do feel butterflies in your stomach and you want to get rid of any nervous feelings, you can never go wrong when you find a way to acknowledge the other person's point of view, and that will also put you and them at ease. So start off by reflecting on understanding of the other person's position. Just using positive body language and acknowledging their position will encourage dialogue rather than confrontation. Start off by reflecting an understanding of the other person's position. Using positive body language and acknowledging their position will encourage dialogue rather than confrontation. I'll share another example from when I was working on going from flimsy to firm. That's probably a good way to put it. That was my own quest to become more assertive, because I recognized it as being a problem in my business life. I actually shouldn't even use the words more assertive, because at the time I was a total pushover, and it was affecting the bottom line of my business. Oh, I can just feel the angst come out as I share this with you. This was at a time I was now in business for myself, and the situation was that I had done a favor in terms of a cost reduction for a client who was a member of a women's club. Well, that client told another club member, and so on, and so on, and it got to a point that I had to make a decision as to whether I would ever do business with any member of this club again. I prepped myself by using the next time they call technique, meaning that I knew the days of my company assisting them was over unless they paid the full price. First, it was necessary to acknowledge that it was my flimsiness that put me in that position. So as I stated a few moments ago, I started off by reflecting an understanding of the other person's position, then using positive language and acknowledging their need. I would state the price for engaging my company, and if they were not willing to pay that price, and few of this extended group were, I encouraged them to use a competitor. I even generously provided them the contact information. That is an amazing feeling, to have a synergistic dialogue rather than a confrontation about my prices appearing to be increased, which wasn't the case at all. They hadn't been paying the full price. But a lot of these situations are self-created, and they're self-created because we don't speak up right away. And that's what we have to do, but do it with a pause. Now, why do we struggle to be assertive? Because we want to be liked, because we want to appear easy to get along with, because we think it'll garner more respect or get us that trajectory that we want. All of those are simply false. Your quest to be a superior communicator isn't something you turn on and off. It's going to be very much a part of who you are. To wrap up this episode with a nice little bow, I have a free Assertiveness Accelerator course for you. You can access it at businessclass.expert/power. And this 5-day at your own pace course will help you to get clear about what you want before you ask for it. It will help you avoid apologizing and using disqualifiers like saying, sorry to ask, but we never start a statement that way. It'll help you to be more confident and not use tentative phrases like, could you possibly? You will be more firm, more direct, and you'll receive more respect. You'll learn how to keep it short and simple and to the point, and you'll also learn how to just sound positive and expect to get a yes as a response. Being skilled in assertiveness and how to say no confidently, politely, and respectfully and effectively is a key aspect of your powerful, polished persona. Thanks so much for joining me today. Bye for now.